So it is called a quadratic equation because the highest power of x here is 2. Okay. So of course, the implication is that the coefficient of x squared shouldn't be 0. Okay. Because if it happens to be a 0, then we're basically going back to a linear equation where the highest power of x is 1. So there are 3 main ways you can solve the quadratic equation. Okay. So the first is you can do factorization. Okay. So you just you need to find a way to factorize and replace the middle item with a given expression, which of course we're going to do. And then the second is you can use the formula. Okay, it's called the formula method. And then finally, you can use the graph. Okay, you can use the graph to get what you need. Okay. So before we start, I want you to understand that because the highest power of x is 2, then it means that there must be 2 values of x that will satisfy this equation. Okay, so whenever you're solving quadratic equation, there will always be 2 values of the unknown variable that satisfy the equation. So we call those 2 values the roots. Okay, so there are 2 roots that satisfy this equation. So we're going to start with the factorization method. And let's see how it works. So the first thing we're going to do is, this is the constant, right? And this is the coefficient of, x squared, right? So we're going to use the constant to multiply this first term, okay? So if we say -8 multiply the 3x squared, so we're going to have -12x squared. Okay. So this is what comes next is the hardest part. Okay. Particularly, it's not really difficult, but that is what most people tend to find difficult to do. Okay. So it requires a little bit of thinking. So you need to think of 2 numbers, okay, that if you multiply them, you're going to get a -12 as x squared, okay? And if you add those 2 numbers, you're going to get the middle item, which is plus 2x. So again, you need 2 numbers that if you multiply them, you're going to get the -12x squared. And when you add them, you get the middle expression 2x. So yeah, so what immediately comes to mind would be 4 and 6. Okay, so what should immediately come to your mind should be 4 and 6. Okay, so but which of them should take a negative and which one should retain a positive? So that is not what you have to think of. So for instance, if we say let's take a positive, all right? So let's make this a 4x and a 6x. Then if we say 4x multiply 6x, it gives a positive 12x squared, which of course is not what we have here, okay? So the positive doesn't work. So another thing we can do is we'll try to bring in a negative, okay? So we can choose 4x and a -6x, okay? So does that work? Let's see. 4x multiplying -6x would give us this item, okay? But if you add them, does it give you the middle value or the middle expression? So -6x plus a 4x is going to give a -2. But what we have here is +2, okay? So the only thing that is going to work is if we have a 4x and a +6x, all right? So this is me just trying to break things down. What has to be going on your mind. Okay, but it is something relatively simple to do. All right, so negative 4x multiplied positive 6x is going to give the negative 12x squared. And if you add them, it becomes positive 2x. So that is what we have to do. All right, so we're now going to substitute that middle item with what we have. Okay, so it's going to be 3x squared. Okay, so how do we get it to? By saying a 6x, which is one we have here, and a negative 4x. Okay, so 6x less negative 4x still gives the 2. Then there is still a negative 8. So everything is 0. So the next thing is we're going to put things into the brackets. All right, so these two are 3x squared plus a 6x will be in brackets. Then we have a negative and the 4x, and because of the negative here, this should be a positive. Okay, 8 equals 0. So you can see that if we expand, negative multiply 4x gives a negative 4x, okay? And the negative positive is the negative. So if we expand, you're still going back to the original expression we have. So the next thing we're going to do now is to factor out the common item, okay? So in this case, the common item should be a 3x, okay? So if we factor that out, we're going to have 3x. Then we only have x here, and we only have a 2 here, okay? So if we multiply back 3x times x is 3x squared. 3x times 2 is 6x, okay? And the negative, and the common item here should be a 4, okay? So if we factor that out, it becomes x plus a 2. So notice that what you have in this bracket is the same as what you have in the other one. So we can simply take one of them, okay? So we're going to take one of them, x plus 2, and then we'll take the ones we have outside, the 3x, and the negative 4 equals 0, okay? So we can now set each of them to 0. We can set what we have here to 0 and set what we have here to 0, all right? So if we do that, it means x plus 2 becomes 0. So x becomes a negative 2, okay? And for the other part, 3x less 4 is 0. So x is going to be a 4 divided by 3, okay? So these are the two values of x that satisfy this equation, okay? So those are the two values of x that satisfy the equation we have. We call them the roots. Yeah. So at least to help you even understand more, I'm going to take another example and also solve it so that we get to understand more how the factorization works. Okay, so this time let me give something a little bit simpler. Okay, say x squared less a 9 equals 0. Okay, so it's as if the middle item is 0x. Okay, the middle item is 0x, but the step for solving it still remains the same. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we use the constant here and multiply. So if we do that, we're going to have a negative 9x squared. Okay, so we start doing the thinking again. So we need two numbers such that if we multiply them, okay, it's going to give us a negative 9x squared. And if we add them, it's going to give us the missing middle item, which is 0x, okay? So the reason why the middle item is missing is because it is a 0x. So we need two values. If we multiply, we get a negative 9x squared. If we add, it becomes a 0, okay? If we add, it becomes a 0. So of course, what should come to your mind immediately should be a negative 3x and a positive 3x, okay? Because if you say negative 3x multiply positive 3x, you have a negative 9x squared. If you add them, it becomes 0. Okay, so that should be, yeah. So we're now going to bring in that middle item, okay? So x squared plus the positive 1 less the negative 1 minus 9 equals 0, okay? So you see, 3x less 3x is 0, and we're back to the original equation. Okay. So now we're going to put things into the bracket. So x squared plus 3x, then 3x plus a 9 equals 0. So it's time to factor out the common expression, the common item. So in this case, x is common, so we'll bring it out. We have x plus a 3. Here, 3 is common. We take it out, we have x plus a 3 equals 0. So again, the item in the brackets are the same. So we're just going to take one of them. All right, so x plus a 3. Then take the one outside. So the x and the negative 3 equals 0. Okay. So if we set both of them to 0, then this first one becomes the negative 3. Okay. If we set them to 0, the x becomes a negative 3. In this part, x becomes a positive 3. Okay. So a positive and negative 3 are the two values of x. Okay, that will satisfy the equation. Okay. So again, even if you don't really want to go this long process to find the roots, I mean, there is still an alternative way, something relatively easier to do. Okay, so let's start from here. X squared less 9 equals 0, right? So x squared, if we move 9, it becomes positive. Okay, then x becomes, if the square crosses, it becomes a plus minus the square root of 9. Okay, so x becomes a plus minus 3. Okay, so again, the positive 3 and the negative 3. Okay, so yeah, but this only works when that middle item is not there. Okay, so yeah, so that is how the factorization method is done. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do now is for us to do the same thing using the formula method. Okay, but before we get to that, I'm going to show us how to derive that quadratic formula. And to do it, we're just going to use this standard quadratic equation. So notice that, for this to remain a quadratic expression, then the a shouldn't be 0, okay? Because if that happens, then we're back to a linear equation. All right, so the first step we're going to take now is we divide everything by a. Okay, so here we're left with x squared plus b over ax, and now we can move this to the right hand side, the constant. So a negative c over a. Okay, good. So this is where we need to do a little bit of thinking. All right, so here is a quadratic equation, say x plus a 2, okay, squared. If we expand this, so this is, if we expand it, it becomes just an x plus 2 into 2, right? So we're gonna have an x squared, okay, plus 4x plus a 4, okay? So you can see this first part, okay? This first part is already what we have here. So the question is, what is that constant we're going to add? Okay, what is the constant we're going to add here so that we can collapse the whole thing to something as simple as this? All right, so what is that constant that we're going to add here so that we can collapse the whole expression to be as simple as this? Okay, but again, whatever constant we're adding to the left, we have to add it to the right so that it doesn't really make any difference. So in this case, that constant we have to add is a b squared over 4a squared, okay? So we're going to add it to the left and also to the right. So x squared plus b over a x plus b squared over 4a squared, okay? Equals a negative c over a, all right? Plus b squared over 4a squared. Okay, good. So you see that we can now reduce the left-hand side to something as simple as this, all right? So if we do that, we're going to have x plus b over 2a everything squared, okay? All right? So if you expand this, all right? If you expand it, then it's going to end up giving you the middle part. Okay? It will end up giving the middle part. Okay. Good. When we come here, of course, the common factor is the 4a squared. Okay. So 4a squared divided by a is just 4a. So we multiply the negative c, we have a negative 4ac plus, so 4a squared divided 4a squared is just 1. So we have a b squared, okay? So x plus b over 2a squared equals, so let me just rearrange things so that we have a b squared less a 4ac divided by the 4a squared, okay? So we're getting closer and closer to what we need. Okay. So the next thing is the square. We need to take it away, okay? And to do that, it crosses the other side and becomes a square root, okay? So we now have x plus a b over 2a equals a plus minus the square root of everything. So b squared minus 4ac over 4a squared, okay? Now for the numerator, we cannot find the square root of that, okay? So we can just retain it there. So b squared minus 4ac. But for the denominator, we can find the square root. So the square root of 4 is 2, square root of a squared is just a, all right? So to complete the calculation, we need to move this to the right-hand side so that x can stand alone, which of course is what we want. So x becomes a negative b over 2a plus minus the square root of b squared less 4ac divided by a 2a, okay? So you can see that they share the same denominator. We can just take that as 1 so that we have a negative b plus minus the square root of b squared less 4ac divided by 2a, okay? And that is the so-called quadratic formula. All right. So what's the point of this? So the point is, if I give you a quadratic equation to calculate or find the roots So there are three information you need. You just need to know the value of A, B, and C, and you're done. Okay? So you just plug in those values and you're gonna get what you need. All right. The value of A, B, and C. If you plug them in, then you have what you need. So now we're gonna use the equation to now, we're gonna use this formula to now solve the same question we had using the factorization method. Okay, so it was 3x squared plus 2x less 8 equals 0. Okay, so you can see that A is always the coefficient of x squared. The B is always the coefficient of x, and the C is always the constant. Okay, we're done. We have the A, B, C. So just plug them in here, and you have the roots. All right. So let's do it. So negative B, the B is 2, so it becomes a negative 2. So negative 2 plus, negative 2 plus minus the square root of B squared, and the B is 2, so 2 squared less 4 times A is 3 times C is a negative 8. Okay, you see? Then everything divided by 2 times A, and A is a 3. Okay, good. So we're now having a negative 2 plus minus the square root of, okay? Now, the next thing is you have to keep in mind that you have a negative here, okay? And you also have a negative there, all right? So which means, of course, when you add up things, when you say minus, then everything has to be added, right? Good. So we're going to have a 4. So the negative becomes plus. So this should give us a 12 times an 8. Okay. So that should give us a 12 times an 8. All right. Then we divide everything by 6. So negative 2 plus minus. So that becomes the square root of 100 divided by 6. Becomes negative 2 plus minus square root of 100 is a 10 divided by 6. So we're now going to take the positive negative 2 plus a 10 divided by 6 versus the negative 2 minus a 10 divided by a 6. Okay, so negative 2 plus a 10 is 8. Okay, so we have 8 over 6, which is the same as 4 over 3. All right, and here negative 2, negative 10 is a negative 12. All right, and we use that to divide we use 6 to divide that, and we have a negative 2. Okay, so you can see that this is exactly the same roots we had when we solved using the factorization method. Okay, so whichever method you're using, you will always arrive at the same results. So I'm also going to use this formula method. To solve the second question we had, which was x squared less a 9 equals 0. So here we know that A should be the coefficient of x squared, which is 1. The B is basically missing, so it is 0, and the C is the negative 9. Okay, so we plug things in again, so it becomes minus B. So of course minus 0, right? So plus minus the B squared, so which of course is 0 squared, minus 4 times A is 1, and C is a negative 9. Okay, so you can see where we're headed now, because minus is going to give us a plus. Divided by 2 times A is 1. So yeah, so that's plus minus. So if you add up everything, you should be having a 36. okay, divided by 2. So we have plus minus square root of 36, okay, is 6 divided by 2. So we're going to take the positive 6 divided by 2 to get a 3. And then we're going to take the negative 6 divided by 2 to get a negative 3. Okay? So yeah, so whichever method you use, you're still getting the same results. Okay? Yeah. So the last one I'm going to show you now is how you can use the graph to still get the same thing. Okay? But from the outset, I must let you know that you really need a graph paper which has accurate scales to be able to find what you need, okay? But of course, I'm just using a board. But what I'm going to do is just to show you how to get things done. All right, so that's what I'm going to do. Okay, and again, we're still going to be using the same equations, okay? Okay, so what is going to happen is, let me formulate this. So please take note, we're still solving 3x squared, okay? A plus a 2x less 8, okay? So let's just call the whole expression to now be a y, all right? So let's just make it equals to the y, okay? So I'm gonna put x here and put y here. And then to get things started, I'm going to suppose that the value of x ranges from a -3, okay? So -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, you can keep going depending where you want to stop, all right? So the implication is you're going to take this value of x, which is a -3, plug it into this expression, okay? And you're going to get a value for y, okay? You take the second value for x, plug it into the same equation, you get another value for y, okay? You take the -1, you plug it in, you get another value, okay? You take the 0, you plug it in, you also get something else. You take the +1, you have something, +2, you have something, 3, you have something, 4, you have something, okay? So you now see that for any value of x, you have a corresponding value of y, okay? So for any value of x, you have a corresponding value for y, okay? Good. So at this point, you can now head to the graph, okay? You go to your graph sheet. So this is the y-axis and this is the x-axis, all right? So you need to accurately identify the points for you to get what you need, all right? So this is a -1, -2, -3, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, like that, okay? And then for the y, this would be a 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? Keeps going. This would be a -1, a -2, -3, -4, okay? So depending on how many points you want to represent, all right? So the next one will be, you ask yourself, when x is -3 and y is that value, okay, where do they converge, okay? So if x is a -3, okay, say this is what we're doing, for instance, okay, and y is, I don't know, so let's say 1, okay, then this is where they converge. Then next is, when x is a -2, then what is y, okay? So maybe the y is going to be a 0 or something, so that we're here, okay? Then when x is -1, what is the value of y? So whatever that value of y is, you put it in. Then when x is 0, so you do get what is going on, right? So you just keep representing things like that, okay, like that. Then after doing that, you use a line to join everything. Okay, you use a line to join everything. Okay, so for sure, it must be the case that whatever line you've produced will cut the x-axis in two different places. Okay, so whatever line you've produced is going to cut the x-axis in two places. So for instance, the first place here is a -2, and the second place would be whatever value you have there. Okay, so if you use a graph with accurate scales to do things, those 2 points where it cuts the x-axis, which is here and also here, whatever values you have there must be the value of x and y, okay, that satisfy this equation. Okay, so that must be the value of x and y that's, satisfy the equation that makes the whole thing to be 0. Okay, so that's that. And so yeah, I this is the much I can do, okay, because I don't really have a graph board or something that will allow me to calculate things the accurate way, right? But you can see how I took time to explain what you have to do. So if you have a graph paper and you do things the right way, then for sure you're going to have the correct value for x, the two values of x that satisfy the whole expression, right? Yeah, so that's that. Then let me also do the second one, okay? So this time around, the equation we're using is x squared less a 9, right? So just let me make this to start from -4, okay, 3, 2, 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, okay? All right, so we now start to plug things in, okay? We start to plug things in. So you see that here you're gonna say -4 squared, okay? Which is going to give you a 16, right? And you subtract the 9 from it, you get a value there, all right? Then at this point, you say a -3 squared, okay? Less than 9. Of course, everything drops to 0, okay? Then you say a -2 squared less a 9. So -2 squared is going to give us a 4. Subtract 9 from it, then you have a 5, right? Then a -1 squared less a 9, okay? And it's going to give us a -8, okay? Then 0 squared less a 9 is going to give a -9, okay? Then 1 squared less a 9 is going to give a -8. 2 squared less a 9, you're going to have a -5. 3 squared less a 9 is going to give 0. So just like that, all right? So again, the y, the x, okay? So say here is a -1, a -2, a -3, okay? And here is 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you can see that the value of y goes as high as goes as low as high as 5 and as low as a -9. Okay. So say here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. -1, -2. Okay. -3. So you can just keep doing that, right? So the next thing is you say if if x is 4, then what is y? Okay, then you look for the point of intersection. Then if x is 3, then y is 0. And that is, of course, something that happens here. Okay, then if x is a -2, then y is a -5. Okay, so you can trace, so there's something that's going to happen somewhere here, right? Then if x is a -1, then this becomes a -8. Okay, so you even have to go further down. Then for 9, it is 0. So maybe here is 9. Okay. Then for +1, it becomes 8. So we go down here. For 2, it becomes a -5. So let's say here is 5. So there. For 3, it becomes a 0. And we're here. Okay. So yeah, you just keep doing that, right? So if you now merge everything, okay? So let's merge everything. Okay, so you notice that the line, okay, cuts the x-axis in 2 different places, okay? And where did that happen? When x has a value of -3 and when it has a value of +3, okay? So those are the 2 values of x that satisfy the equation to be 0, okay? So, yeah, that's that. So yeah, so you see that there are 3 ways you can get things done. Okay? You can factorize, but it really requires that you do a little bit of thinking. So where you have to say, what are the 2 numbers you multiply, you get something. If you add, you get something else, right? Or you can decide to use the formula method. I think that is the simplest, because you always know the value of A, B, C. Then you just plug them into the formula and you get what you need. And the last is the graph. So only do this if you have a graph paper with scales, so that you are sure you're going to get the correct answers.